Photoshop and before computers, I ended up with one of those school projectors, and I did a painting of her seated on a moose as the Queen of Canada, trooping the color like this. I showed the images to my dealer at the time, and he said, I don't have to show these, and I don't have to tell you why. He was terrified that he would be criticized, because in those years people revered the monarchy. Now we satirize it. I was the first guy to satirize the monarchy when I put her on the moose. It ended up, I lived on a street called Shaw Street, and the Queen was at the opening of the Shaw Festival in Niagara-on-the-Lake. I called my show the Other Shaw Festival. I opened it at my own studio, and I had a friend with a Rolls Royce, and his wife sat in the back with a hat and a glove going like this all afternoon. And the press went wild because I was the first time making fun of the monarchy. I did the painting. It made headlines around the world. It said, Canada in royal rage over Queen on Moose. Monarchists threatened to slash canvases. Artists warned to stay indoors. The whole thing was like an Andy Warhol scenario. And here I was at age 30 where I became this mischievous artist. It was in newspapers from Johannesburg to Los Angeles to Paris. P.S. I never sold one painting. It wasn't until 8 years later that a very wonderful woman bought the first image of the Queen on the moose, and later major collectors started to buy it, and it has become probably my best known image. When I painted it, I was being interviewed by radio stations and television stations all over the country, and one lady called in from London, Ontario, and she said, this is a disgrace. If the man feels this way, he should keep it to himself. He should go back where he came from, which was North Toronto. There was a lot of right-wing reaction to this, the way I mischievously depicted this image of this lady from London who was the head of state. Long story short, I was in London in 2015 for the reopening of Canada House in Trafalgar Square, and I was invited to meet the Queen. I couldn't believe it. But there she was, age 89 at the time, and she came in, and you're only allowed about 30 seconds with her, and I knew that this was a special moment. So she came over and smiled, and I said, Your Majesty, this is such an honor. 40 years ago, I painted you as the Queen of Canada, seated on a moose. It caused a scandal at the time, but it became my most famous picture. And thanks to you, I made a living all these years. And she looked at me with a radiant smile, and she said, how amusing. She was not offended. She thought it was cute. So, as I said, it's only one of many images that I did. The Queen, the moose, the flags, the barns, and many of my most important works are right here in Dhaka, and all because of this man sitting here who is like my muse. Here he was. Durjoy showed up at I have a studio in a small town north of Toronto as well, and he showed up in an Aston Martin convertible with his license plate that said Dhaka. And he became my friend overnight, and 2 or 3 years later he came to me and said, are you interested in doing this? And I still can't believe it. I'm blinking at how beautifully all of this came into being because of Durjoy, because of Asma, because of Barry and the Canadian High Commission. It's just a delight to be here and to explore this amazing city of contrasts. And you can be sure when I get back to Canada, I'm going to be talking up Dhaka big time. So thank you all, and I hope you enjoy the show.